Hey guys, it is April from Getting Hooga With It. Today I wanted to go through some horror books that I think would be a good intro to horror. So if you are leery of getting super scared and don't want to have to sleep with your lights on, these are some books that I think are really good ways to just kind of dip your toe into a little bit of horror. So let's get into it. The first book that I think would be perfect if you are new to horror is The Silence. Now, I read this a couple of months ago with Julie from A Girl in a Book, and The Silence is a wonderfully creepy book about a time when there are these creatures unearthed from the ground and they go flying out into the world and they kill a lot of people. And they kill people by sound. So if you make a noise, they will hear you and kill you. Now, that sounds absolutely terrifying. And when I first heard about this from Jenna, from Jen the Librarian, I thought it really sounded a lot like Bird Box, except these creatures are hunting by sound and it's not sight. That's the issue. So I just had this feeling like it was going to be just like that. And it's not. It's not as good as Bird Box. Like, let's be honest, that's my ultimate favorite horror book of all time. But The Silence is most definitely creepy. But it's not filled with gore. This is not so gross that you couldn't eat a sandwich while you're reading this. I don't know why you need to eat sandwiches when you're reading, but it's the visual that came to mind. But it's not overly gory. It's also not overly scary. This is good. This is, I think, a really good start into horror for you. The next book I personally think would be good for someone new to horror is Night Film. Now, Night Film is kind of on that borderline. Is it a horror book? Is it a thriller? And let's just not categorize it. But this is about a girl named Ashley who is found dead. And when she is found dead, it's revealed that her father is this very famous horror movie director, and he directs films that are so disturbing that they're basically banned. Like, no movie theaters are playing his stuff because it's just that intense. And so there's this huge cult following kind of underground. So this book also follows a reporter who once upon a time thought very bad things about this horror director and kind of tried to bring him down, and that really fell flat for him. His career is kind of floundering, and then when he finds out about Ashley being killed, he just cannot let it go. He thinks that Ashley's father has something to do with it, and so he begins to investigate. And this really isn't overly scary. There are only a few scenes actually with Ashley in it who you'd think, you know, this is potentially the victim of a murder or whatever. She's nothing scary. But no, there were scenes with her that really did kind of creep me out a little bit. But it's few and far between. You really are just kind of trying to find out what happened to her. So for that reason, because you're not getting hit time and time again with these scary scenes, I think that this is a very good book for someone who's a little frightened of horror books. The next book I want to talk to you about is Florence and Giles. The more I think about this book, the more I love this book. I read this, I think it was in the winter, and I liked it at that time. But now that I've taken a step back and it's been a few months, I really love this book. This is a retelling of The Turn of the Screw. And if you know anything about that book, it's a classic Henry James book that needs to get more hype on BookTube. So for The Turn of the Screw, it's like a classic ghost story where you have these two kids and you have a governess, and the governess is very afraid that there are people on the grounds that may be ghosts that might be hurting these children. So this kind of flips that story on its head, and it's told from the perspective of the little girl. And the little girl's name is Florence, and she's fascinating. It's funny though, because when I first picked this book up, I thought that it wasn't going to be horror at all. The first big chunk of this book actually is kind of cozy to me. It follows Florence kind of sneaking into the library to read, and she grabs these books from the library, and then she goes upstairs into a tower, and she sits in this tower, and it's her little spot to read. And I thought that was so cozy. But then a governess comes on board. Florence has a real problem with this governess because she's not eating the way a normal person would. She's up in the night and too clingy with her brother, and just Florence is nervous about it. And there are scenes in here that truly are creepy. They will creep you out, but it's not so hard-hitting that you can't handle it. That's Florence Giles. I hope you go and read it. If you like it, there is apparently a sequel that I have not read yet, and I cannot remember the name. Oh, I hate that when I can't remember the name. If I can remember it, I'll pop it in the description box below. Next is This House is Haunted. Now, this isn't the most brilliant writing I've ever read, and I'm not going to say it is. I think I gave this 3 stars. However, it is a kind of cozy ghost story. This is about a governess who goes to a home, and she's taking care of these little kids, and when she gets there, there aren't any adults around. And she's like, well, where are your parents, kids? And there are no adults around, and she's dealing with these kids who have a little bit of an edge to them, let's say. Right away, when she arrives to this town, she has thing after thing after thing occur to her that makes her feel unwelcome. It is a really, really fun ghost story. I love ghost stories personally. I don't know about you, but for me, it's my favorite type of horror book. But this isn't so scary that you're not going to be able to sleep at night. So for that reason, I would say read This House is Haunted. Finally, we're going in with one last ghost story. I mean, I can't help it. So The Woman in Black by Susan Hill is another one. I don't know if you know the movie rendition of it with Daniel Radcliffe. The movie was not as good as the book. They never are. So the book is, first of all, incredibly short. You could read this in one sitting, no problem. And this follows a man who, I think this is 19th century. It's an older Victorian kind of setting where this man goes to a home kind of in the middle of nowhere, and a woman has died, and he is, collecting her belongings, sorting out her affairs at the end. And he arrives, and he gets this very eerie sense that he's not alone, that there's something wrong with the house, and there is. For me, I would say this is the least scary of all of the ghost books that I have suggested here. That said, it's got this eeriness to it and this isolation that gives you the creeps. And there's something to me about being completely alone in a house that is not livable, that is got something wrong with it, that creeps me out. And I think the setting alone kind of makes the book, if you're asking me. I really liked it. So those are all of the books that I would recommend if you're a little bit afraid of horror books, you don't want anything too gory, you want to be able to sleep. I think you'll be able to do that with these. So let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these and what you've thought of them, and I will see you next time. Okay, bye!